Welcome back to another episode of the Twisted Tubz podcast. I am Stephen Tuberty, aka Twisted Tubz. He is Joe Hitchin, aka Joe E Legend. Joe, welcome very much. Thank you very much for coming to the show. It's actually a pleasure to have you here because due to a mutual friend of ours, David Woodland, I don't think this would have happened, and I'm so happy that it actually got brought up in conversation. And now I'm sitting here talking to the man himself. So how have you been, man?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very, very good. As I said, I mean, just looking back over the last few days, because I was trying to think, like, when Dave said it to me, Joey Legend, and then it sprung. I was like, wait, WWF, TNA. Wait, he was in a UL show in Limerick City. I was like, oh man, get this guy on, please. It was like we talked to him, so that's awesome. But like you've been doing like music, like correct me if I'm wrong. It was at 1969 you were born, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm 51. Yeah.
Ontario, in Canada.
That's right.
I'm
not playing Trivial Pursuit with you, shit.
Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen over the years and what we've seen through the cascades of the wrestling history, there's good breeding and wrestling talent from Canada, like, you know.
There's been a few. Yeah, there's been a couple guys who get by. That kid Bret Hart, I heard good things about.
I heard he's a bit of a workhorse, to be fair, like.
yeah, I heard good things.
But and the reason I go into like just straight into the wrestling on it is because like you've been, as I said, I mentioned like the year you were born, because in your run through your whole career, like as I said, if I'm wrong on any of these stats, you can correct me, like, but
sure.
Is it 14 ring names you've had?
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you. It runs up. It runs up. It could be more.
So we could say at least there's over a dozen, like, and they're all like different programs.
Easily.
Obviously, like,
it has a lot of favors too. There's a lot of favors too. Like when I was working in Winnipeg, for Tony Condello, Don Callis, all that. They wanted me to work twice a night on this one tour, on the Indian Reservation tour. So once they put me under the mask as Dr. X, and then later on I come out as myself, because Don didn't want to do the trip. He said he was sick. I just think he didn't want to do the trip, to be fair. But I was like, yeah, I'm happy. I just want ring time. And Dr. X was, nobody bought that Dr. X was going to do any business. So I pulled the goat, the ring announcer, we called her the goat. I pulled her aside and told her that don't say I'm Dr. X. Say I'm from San Francisco General Hospital, Communicable Disease Ward, and call me the male nurse. And then I went out there and sashayed around and did like as actually I mentioned to Vince, it made Goldust look butch. And I just had a few laughs. And basically I was just going out of my way to have a few laughs and kill time and have some fun, and to make Bad News Brown, if you remember him.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I want to make him laugh because he's a great guy, one of the best people I ever met. We were tag champs in Africa, actually. But he always had one of those sour looks on his face. Like in every one of his posters, that sour look, he kind of carried that around. So when I could get back through the curtain and he'd be sitting on the floor laughing, a huge smile, go, "What are you doing? What the hell was that? Oh, that's great. Keep doing it. It's hilarious." I felt, I'd done my job for that day. So yeah, like male nurse was kind of a favor. Bluto Belushi was a favor for them too. There was a few gimmicks that, when I'm working Rock and Roll Wrestling Bash in Germany, nobody uses their traditional wrestling gimmick. It's all, it's like a metal show where we wrestled during the concert.
Okay.
So they put guys in wrestling masks, and there's a guy named LSD, and he wanders around the ring and does flips and stuff like he's messed up on drugs. And they put me out there as Boris the Butcher, who's like their kind of feature guy. And I come out in a butcher's apron and a white mask. Everybody does like a lucha thing, wears a mask. And I'm covered in fake blood, and I got handfuls of raw meat that I throw at the crowd. And I beat up 2 people and leave. It's like a 3-4 minute match. It's not very long. None of the matches are particularly long.
Yeah.
Because it's not really a wrestling show. These are music fans who like a bit of violence. They're not wrestling fans who listen to rock. So in turn, I'll do the Boris the Butcher gimmick for the Wrestling Bash. Yeah. So you just become adaptable. Joe Megalodon, when I was working for Hustle in Japan, I thought that was a ridiculous name, but they're paying the bills. All right, I'll be a Megalodon for you. So yeah, a lot of it's favors.
No, but that's really cool. I mean, because you could have been Joey Legend for the whole run, but it's the fact you get to play around in all these different gimmicks and types of, like just different characteristics and things, and just have fun with it, as you said, as you're traveling the world.
Yeah, I was Moses once.
Really? And what promotion was that for?
That was for the Rock and Roll Wrestling Bash. I came in, they were filming it for TV, and they draw great. They draw it like that show. I think we had 4,000 people in.
Wow.
And they said I was going to be Moses, and I was I was wrestling this guy who's like the Pharaoh. I don't know if he had like Ramses the Pharaoh, or whatever. He was the Pharaoh at least. And he was a skinny guy who came out in a Pharaoh gimmick, but he would hit people with a big pink dildo. And so I had to, for some reason, Moses fought him. So I had to come up with like, what can I do that's kind of semi-religious based? So I would like use palm strikes to the forehead like I was a faith healer. And those were my particular strikes. And then when we were in the battle royal, yeah, exactly. And in the battle royal, when I had all the guys fighting in the middle, then when I hit the ropes, I ran through the middle, popping everybody in the head with my hands. So it looked like I was parting the Red Sea as I ran through them. And I turned around, got clotheslined out, and I was done. But I wasn't going to get any bigger pop than what I got off that. So I thought, yeah, we'll take the money and run type. But yeah, it was. I've wound up using that palm strike thing. I've extrapolated that and used that when I'm wrestling as Joey Legend now because it actually works. It gets over.
Yeah. And so, you know, back in your, like, it would have been your earlier days, obviously, you know, when you would have like started in back in your earlier run, Sex and Violence was your tag team, right? Yeah. So walk me through Sex and Violence, and what was the faction that came after that? It was Tug Life.
Yep.
It was the one Christian was in, wasn't it?
Christian Rhino, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was I left the gym first. I was in the gym at Sully's gym in Toronto, Ron Hutchinson, Sweet Daddy Secret training. So I was there for 2 years, and then I got booked in Japan for FMW.
Yeah.
So just as I was getting ready to go for FMW, Edge won a essay writing contest. If you wrote the best essay for the newspaper about why I want to be a wrestler, you get a free training. So that's what he did, and he won. So he showed up at the gym just as I was getting ready to go to Japan. So I went to Japan, and while I was there, I'd call back to my buddies and such. And my buddy Keith, who wrestled as Johnny Destiny and Zach Wilde, he was saying, yeah, I've been hanging out with this Adam guy. He's a good guy, blah, 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 blah. We'll all have to hang out when you get back, which we did. So then a year after that, Christian started training. So as they were getting ready, I was already out and picking up bookings and kicking open doors. And believe me, the Tiger Jeet Singh got me the booking for Japan, which kicked open a lot of doors for me. So it's not like I was this phenom. Tiger was a huge help, and I owe the man. So as I opened doors, I brought those guys with, and then just me and Edge were just hanging out, joking around one day, and I said, I thought this idea for a tag team called Sex and Violence, and he really liked the idea. And our manager in Detroit, Handsome Johnny Bradford, had some ins with the wrestling magazines, which were kind of a big deal back then. And so he tried to get us a feature in the magazines because we were getting really well used in Detroit together as a tag team. And they wouldn't print an article on this because they felt the name Sex and Violence was too suggestive. That goes to show how long ago this was, right? Now it might be the most tame name out there. So we had our run. We said we were from New Jersey,
right? Because
the New Jersey Devils had just beaten the Detroit Red Wings in the Stanley Cup of hockey, 4-0. So it was a sweep. So we started wearing New Jersey Devils jerseys out to the ring and bringing brooms to sweep to piss off the Detroit fans. It was real easy, but it kind of ran its course because, I mean, years go by and it's not the same Stanley Cup anymore. So we did a thing where our team broke down and he and I had to wrestle each other. So we wrestled each other, did a great draw, a crowd, big full house. And as we melted down into this fight, Christian hits the ring and says, hey, what are you guys doing? You guys are supposed to be friends. I mean, we're all, you can't let these Americans get the best of you, for crying out loud. We're all from Canada. You guys have been saying you're from it. What have they done to you, type thing. And so we start kind of like, yeah, I think you're right. And then a bunch of the Detroit babyfaces hit the ring and get mad at us. Then Rhino came and jumped the ring and he was on our side. And so we started a team called Thug Life, which was basically the four of us. We had some other floating members. Johnny Destiny was one. Yeah. Bill Scullion was one. Kingdom James was one. But the four of us were kind of the core members. But we did not necessarily marry ourselves to just the four because then that kind of is horseman-ish and we didn't want to rip anything off. So we decided to be the pro-Canadian faction and fighting the Americans because Detroit's just over the border from Canada, from Windsor, Canada. So we could zip over the border, wrestle, and zip back. And we were burning the American flag in the ring. We started 14 riots there. We were fist fighting with the crowds and everything. It was great. So really, really quite cool.
That legitimately.
And yeah, legitimately. But the hilarious part is that we got ours off the ground, and people were showing up with American flags and chanting USA at us at every match. And 3 weeks later, 3 weeks, Bret Hart started his pro-Canada, anti-America faction on WWE TV and made ours look weak by comparison. He had the whole machine behind him. But in fairness, we were ahead of the curve by about 3 weeks. So I can be proud of that.
You got in there just before him, but as I said, it's just the bigger machine had a
exactly,
bigger stake in the pie, if you will. Oh, that sucks, man.
We
that could have been
read the audience early.
Yeah.
I mean, with that promotion, we couldn't have blown up much bigger than we did, considering the scope of the promotion. So we did really well with it for a good while. It's just WWE has a massive international scope. So we weren't gonna. We got it as big as we could have got it anyways. So I'm not saying WWF stepped on us in any way. I'm not like moody about that. I'm just kind of proud of myself. You know what? We saw something there that was a little bit ahead of what the big guys saw. So I thought we had our the right idea on how things were going in the business.
That's awesome, dude. Because I mean, as I said, it's because that Bret Hart's pro Canada thing did blow up.
Huge.
I mean, he became a heel in the States, right? And he was a face in Canada.
Yeah, so brilliantly booked. Brilliantly booked.
Back when, I mean, you look at like the WWE standard now, like the way it's kind of all 50-50 booking, and like it's storytelling just gets kind of chopped on its ass after a few weeks. It's harder now. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know about
but
you.
It's not. I don't know if it's necessarily the talent's fault or the company's fault as delivering a wrestling product. I think it's largely because they're a publicly traded company.
Oh yeah, I mean the PG rating doesn't help it either. Because
it's not even the PG. I think you have to turn over a certain amount of interest, and a certain amount of ratings inside a short amount of time. Whereas before, WWE could really let something simmer for a year. The Savage Steamboat thing, lasted a good long time stuff before it paid off. Hulk and Andre, they months and months. Now they just kind of throw crap out there. Is that working? Okay, let's do it every week for the next 3 weeks. So the shareholders will be happy in the meeting. So I think they're kind of at the mercy of the shareholders for being a publicly traded company. If they were private, they'd be able to stretch angles out longer, like they did with Rock Cena, which compelled people for a whole year. So I think it's down to the numbers of that.
I mean, I think even looking at it as well is because you know yourself, because you've been in this business a long time. You've been rocking around and you've been kind of in the earlier stages. You've kind of gone up through all the changes as well. But even social media and like the internet age and everything, and what kayfabe and everything else is kind of has kind of messed with people in a way as well. Now, not the business side of it, because I think the talent still do what the talent do. I just think that the business model has changed somewhat throughout the time. And going off of that question is like, because obviously we talked about like all your ring names and like Sex and Violence and Thug Life and just because the amount of different companies, I don't think people probably that follow your career and stuff very, very closely are very aware of the places you've gone to, but like touring the world as a wrestler, like that's got to be some crazy life. Like, I wrestled for 8 years, but I never did it to the level you did. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, so like to get to travel the entire world and dip in and out of all these different promotions and stuff, and really kind of like just get the feet wet in all these different kind of types of environment. That must have been
I did have the advantage, that Tiger Cheatsing got me to Japan for FMW and for NOW. So before the internet was really a thing, my name was in the sheets as a Canadian who was going to Japan. And then I was going to South Africa as well. So I was already kind of getting the reputation to be this international guy. So if somebody else is paying for this guy, maybe we should too. That's kind of the mindset of the promoters. And then once you have your WWE stink on you and your TNA stink on you, and then obviously I've been the Noah and 01 and stuff like that, it's easier to promote me than it is a guy who's not been those places. Like most promotions like to be able to put WWE on their poster.
Yes. So
that the casual fans might not know what, local wrestling promotion is, but they recognize the WWE logo. So they can legally put that on there saying former WWE Joe Legend, former Impact Legend, whatever. So I become easier to market that way. So it's easier for me to get out there and get booked because I'm easier to advertise.
Yes.
So it's not like you necessarily did anything wrong or you wouldn't have. It's just that I had the benefit of having some luggage to carry with me along the way that helped people to understand who I was, even if they didn't know who I was, they were like, WWE, we must pay attention because we're wrestling fans.
I mean, so hitting even being like just in these places for small even chunks of time and just dipping the feet in all of these promotions, it's better for you brand wise going forward, because as you said, someone sees that on like your pro wrestling TV and they're like, oh, hire him. That's good for you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It kicked open doors for me. So yeah,
it's awesome. It's really awesome. Like I was looking through like your videos and stuff, just to kind of like refresh the memory and things, and I was going to, like, oh, WWP and all this, and it was like, Jesus, I was going to, oh yeah, I was watching a match there, and I wanted to ask you something actually, because I couldn't find it on Wikipedia and stuff like that. But there's the gimmick you had, the Book of Legends.
Oh yeah, mouth off, yeah.
So like,
that's just my promo.
Run me through that. Like, where did that come from? And in WWP, sorry.
Yeah.
Is there a time you had, because in this one match that I watched, you had all the gold, like all the belts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you were running with all the titles and everything in that, like, and then there was the Book of
Legends. Those were different. Those were different promotions. Like, I've always had the catchphrase "Heroes come and go, legends live forever" since I started doing the legend thing. The thing is, I was kind of taking a page out of The Rock's book, or out of several of the wrestlers' book, who they have like an opening statement and a promo and a closing statement.
Yeah.
Right. So like when I was wrestling in Eastern Canada, I kind of ripped off what stand-up comics do, or what Mick Foley does. Because I was a heel, I would be like, North Sydney, Nova Scotia. So I'd be, North Sydney, Nova Scotia. And yay! And what a freaking dump. Boo! Right?
Straight pop, yeah.
Exactly. It's cheap heat, but it works, right? But I wanted one that's a little bit more universal, where I didn't have to do that in every town. I could still add that, but I wanted one. And so I just kind of, and the Book of Legend was opened up at the page marked, yada, 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 chapter 1, blah, blah, blah. And then run with my promo. It was just kind of, finally The Rock is kind of the same opening statement that people expect, and then give them a bunch of stuff they don't expect, and then close with an expectation.
But I do think that it's cool, because it's very much yours. It's like yours. It's that entire thing, and just is attached to Joey Legend, the legendary Joey Legend, Book of Legends. As you said, heroes never die, legends live forever. It just works,
Yeah, it hit nicely. It all kind of fit. But when I was in South Africa, the video you saw, I brought, because they were putting their belt on me, the WWP World Belt.
Yeah.
But I already had the ICWA belt from France, the IWF title from Russia, and the, what was the Japanese title I had? Anyway, I had a belt from Japan for a promotion I was working with, the Wrestle Aid Project, where they had Pan Pacific Wrestling was the title, Pan Pacific Wrestling Super Heavyweight Champion and Master of Excalibur. I had to carry a sword to the ring and such. So either way, I had those 3 belts. So they said, bring those. We have 4 of these dancing girls, or I guess they're equivalent of Nitro girls, I suppose.
Yeah.
And they'll carry the belts to the ring, but we have a 4th girl who doesn't have anything to carry. So that'll be ideal when you win the belt, and we'll have all 4, just kind of serendipitous, as it were. At one point, I did a show in Canada during that time. I'd flown over to, my kids were just born. So I flew to Toronto with the wife and kids to let my parents meet their grandkids.
Yeah.
And I did a wrestling show while I was there. I wrestled one of my old students, Tyson Dukes, who's tremendous. If you ever look him up, he's spectacular. And they decided they wanted to list all my belts. So I gave them a list, and I had 12. I didn't realize I had 12 belts.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, the introduction was kind of funny, because they'd be going, okay, from France, the ICWA World Heavyweight Champion. And as I go to step forward, also the IWF champion in Russia. I go to step forward, also, and they kept doing the also thing. Till eventually the crowd started yelling also as well.
Yeah.
And then eventually, by the time they'd announced them all, I didn't bring all those belts because my luggage would have weighed a ton. I brought one of the belts. I think I brought the French belt, because French had a really nice belt. And I had the whole crowd going crazy for the 12 belt thing. And in hindsight, I wish I'd brought all 12, because I probably would have done a ton in photos.
Yeah.
In photo sales,
really
yeah.
Unreal.
But that was my thing. I had one from Poland and a couple from Germany, England, Italy, Spain. I can't remember where, Portugal maybe. It just kind of is a blur at this point. I get hit in the head for a living. So
yeah.
stuff gets to be a blur after a while.
I mean, look, I mean, that's got to be the thing as well, because I mean, obviously there's wear and tear to this gig, like, because, you know, you hear so many people, like, you know, that don't really get the wrestling business. They don't understand the whole concept of it. And you know, the word fake is thrown around a lot. Like I dare anyone that has never ever like taken a bump in their life to actually step in there and do it, or even if it's not in a ring, take a bump anywhere, grass, burnt out cars, whatever the hell you can find, take it. And you know, tell me if that shit doesn't hurt, because it does. You know what I mean? I've always like designed it like this to people. It's it's predetermined entertainment, but it's the shit you're watching is real. You know what I mean? It's choreographed.
It can be very hard. Yeah. Well, just September and January. This past September, this past January, I had each of my hips replaced.
Fuck. Jesus Christ, man. I mean, my back is
now that was
fucked.
Inevitably, I was supposed to have that happen because I have like, apparently there's a genetic issue in there.
Yeah.
I had like extra bone scraping with the car. I had no cartilage left. Eventually, I would have had to get that, but I imagine, you know, leg drops off the top of cages and running leg drops and all this stuff. Just, you know, taking weird bumps and the occasional, you know, bad bump, that probably sped things along. So it's not as, you know, like people making noise about it. Oh, it's like a trampoline and they're all friends and stuff like this. Well, I've been in the ring with plenty of guys who've been just jerks. We've had to, you know, thug each other out a little bit. We still work towards a common goal. We still want to be professional. But there are people who take a little liberties, and you got to straighten them out from time to time. And yeah, it's just physical. Every bump that was measured, every bump that you take is the equivalent of a 35-mile-an-hour car crash. It's just you're prepared for it.
Yeah.
Now, exactly. I've been in the business 30 years almost. So how many car crashes have I been in, along with real car crashes?
Put that on your Titantron coming to the ring, survived 30 years of car crashes, you know? Just, and I'm still walking to this fucking ring.
They'll be booking me as Mick Foley too. I can't. I don't need that fall off a cage now.
And you know, and you know, when it comes to like obviously wrestling, you know yourself, it's because you've been kind of in and out of so many things. You've done training and everything else, and
sure.
So like the celebrity wrestling thing that you did.
Yes.
Yes. Like what was that? How did that come about? Like, and what was the whole core kind of like experience with it?
Okay. Well, here's the thing. This is going to probably bug people. I loved it. I had a great time. Yeah. But they also paid me well, and I got to hang out with like Victoria Silvstedt and Kate Lawler, who are both incredibly hot. So they paid me to hang out with those two. You can't tell me I'm having a bad time.
It's a win-win.
But exactly, yeah. So I was, you know, now I'm a dirty old man. Then I was just a dirty man. But what we did is I was wrestling regularly in the UK. Currently I've done 138 tours in the UK. But I was doing one of my tours in the UK for Brian Dixon All-Star Wrestling. I recommend anybody go to them. Great show. And this guy named Stephen Lovelock, I believe, they pulled me aside and said, this guy Stephen wants to talk to you. He's from ITV.
Nice,
so I went and talked to him. He said, we have this idea for a show. I can't tell you too much because, you know, I'm not at liberty to, but we'd like to know if you'd be interested in doing this TV series that would involve wrestling and such. So yeah, sure, you pay me, I'll do it. I don't care. Didn't hear from him for a good while. Then I get this call. I'm at home here in Germany. And he's like, listen, we want to bring you in for this tryout. We want to see how you would train people. I said, like, train new wrestlers? He goes, yeah, kind of, but people who've never done it before. I said, okay. He said, can you, when are you available? I said, well, this Friday, I'm going to Canada for 2 weeks. Do you want to set it up for when I get back? They say, no. How about tomorrow?
Right.
And it was like a Monday. And they said, well, fly in tomorrow. And then we'll actually, they ended up flying me in that night.
Yeah.
I did the tryout the next day, and they brought me to this judo gym in the middle of London. And they said, just teach these two guys, like train them like you would like cardiovascular training, like you would other people. And they didn't specify celebrities. But the one guy was a celebrity trainer, and the other guy was Steven, the office guy. And he was standing there like in a button up and jeans. I'm like, dear Lord, like, you're not really ready to work out, are you, pal?
Yeah.
He's like, I'll be fine. So they said, just, whenever you're ready. So I'm like, all right, ladies, this is what we're doing. And the one woman there loved the fact that I called them ladies. She laughed. I don't know why she laughed. So maybe it's kind of cute, but it's not really ha-ha, but she was ha. I said, we're going to do a workout called PTA. It's what Ron Hutchison taught me in Canada. It stands for pain, torture, and agony. The Russian Olympic team does it for 15 minutes. The Russian army does it for 15 minutes. Ron had us do it for 45 minutes.
Wow.
I looked at the celebrity trainer. I said, we're going to do 10 minutes. I said, you're going to last about 8. And I said to Steven, I said, you're going to last about 3. And Steve's like, oh, come on, man. I said, I'm telling you, you're not going to last. And so, pardon me. I said, here, let's get to it. So I started the thing up. At a minute and a half, Steven started crawling off the mats like a wounded Civil War soldier, right? So I walked over and I picked him up by the belt like he was luggage. I said, nope. I said 3 minutes. You give me a basket of 3. And I dragged him back over and I made him do it. At the end of 3, he legitimately, I was crawling off. I'm not sure. I think he was standing over a garbage bucket like he thought he was going to puke.
Fuck.
The celebrity trainer, to his credit, at 8 minutes, I saw he was struggling, but he wasn't quitting because he didn't want me to get the win,
Yeah.
We got to the 10 minutes. I said, and that's 10. And he just dropped like old laundry. There's a bag of laundry. And I just walked away from it because this is a workout I'm used to, right? It's not because I'm this spectacular athlete. I know this workout and I'm comfortable with it. So they liked that. And I'd heard that D'Lo Brown was involved. So I thought it was going to be D'Lo Brown and probably Alex Shane. They'd have a British guy and an American guy. And
yeah.
So when I was leaving, I was like, yeah, so it's probably D'Lo, right? I'm like, how did you know about D'Lo? I said, wrestling's community, pretty small community. There's not too much you can hide from me.
Yeah.
And I thought I didn't have it. So they flew me home that night, treated me great. And then I flew to Canada. And within a week, they called and said, you've got the gig. So I was like, sweet. But they still wouldn't tell me quite what it is, other than it was called Celebrity Wrestling.
Right.
So they gave me the start dates. They sent me my tickets. They told me the duration of time I'd be there. They flew me in. I met with D'Lo at the hotel, and we went to ITV headquarters, towers or whatever. So they take us up to this office, and they're like, okay, so you guys ready to do this? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm ready to know what the hell you want me to do. And they said, okay, well, this, that, Roddy Piper's involved, celebrities, you're going to train celebrities, and they're going to compete. I was like, compete? Okay, that's not sure what you mean by that. Like, are they going to shoot on one another? What are they doing? And they go, here's diagrams of our games towers. I was like, games towers? The hell? So I flipped through the thing, and the best part is I'm like, oh, it's gladiators.
Oh my God,
and
really?
And everybody in the room just stopped. Like, it's almost like in the movies where you hear the record skip and the light goes on one person, everybody stops and drops their silverware. Like, you can't say that. I'm like, why not? They go, well, Gladiators is BBC, we're ITV, we're not that. I was like, well, not for nothing, but you can call it date rape if you want. It's Gladiators. That's what you're doing. You're just putting people have heard of into Gladiators games. And they semi-agreed to it, but didn't want to commit to that logical idea.
Yeah.
So we talked more about it, and they said, any questions, any concerns? And I said, well, I do have a concern. I said, I think you're misrepresenting the product.
Yeah.
D'Lo's looking at me like, you sure you want to bring this up? He agreed with me, but you sure you want to? And I was like, look, this is like, to get the wrestling fans involved, you have D'Lo Brown and you have Roddy Piper. You have me to a lesser degree.
Yeah. But
those two guys alone will get you your wrestling audience. But to call this celebrity wrestling, and they're not going to have wrestling on it. They're going to have other games. These guys are going to have wrestling gimmicks, but it's going to be games. To anybody who's not into wrestling, you're putting wrestling in the title, they're not going to tune in. To people who do like wrestling, they're going to tune in and not have wrestling. They're going to feel misled.
Yeah, because
call it celebrity combat, celebrity challenge, celebrity battle, whatever, But I think the name celebrity wrestling is misleading, and I think that could be a problem.
Yeah.
And they gave me a big talking to, we've got this license and we've done focus groups. I'm like, look, I'm not saying like this, I'm not going to die on this hill. Like, by all means, I'm in. I'm doing this. You're paying me. I'm happy to do it. But for me to see a potential issue and not bring it up, and then it winds up blowing up, you're going to be looking at me like, why didn't you say something sooner? And they were like, well, we appreciate it, but. And D'Lo was right there agreeing with me. And he told me he'd had a small conversation aside with them earlier. And then later on, we talked to Roddy Piper. I said, Roddy's like, just get paid. Don't worry about it. I was like, all right, Rod, you said.
Take the paycheck.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we wound up training British celebrities, giving them wrestling gimmicks, and then them doing like gladiators type games. And in fairness, my team won the men's, women's, and overall team championship. I have a trophy in the other room. So as much as it didn't do well, I wish it did. Also, putting us up against the rebirth of Doctor Who didn't help us either.
Yeah.
Doctor Who stomped us pretty hard, I have to admit. We did a job for the Doctor. But I had a great time, and I got, how many people in my high school could say they had their own TV show, let alone the secondary one, which is called Bring It On ITV2, which I guess was like a summary show, and clips Ozzy Osbourne's son was on it. And I'm a big Ozzy fan, so he was cool to hang with. I like him on his own merit. I like Jack, he's a good guy. But I have to admit, like half of me, anytime I was talking to him was like, where's your dad? 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 But I didn't want to say that because I didn't want him to think I was only being nice to him because I was a fan of his dad. I want to have some kind of character in my life. Yeah, so I did wish he would bring his dad, but he didn't. No big deal, because he was still a great guy.
And I'm running off of like what you were saying about like your gimmicks and stuff and just experiences. WWF, that was your run? Yes. Your run was 2000 to 2002, was it?
99 to 2001.
Okay, so I knew there was a 2-year window there, but
so about a year and a half actually, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like obviously, because we've heard, obviously, you hear a lot of things about WWE and everything else, but like what was that? Because I mean, that tale is a flagship to work for. Like,
sure.
Like, what was that experience like for you for that window of time you were there? Like,
I liked the money. I liked the travel. Yeah. Met some really good people who I'm friends with to this day. I was talking to Stevie Richards earlier today. Great guy. I still consider him a great friend. And by the way, if anybody's into conspiracy theory, he has a podcast called The Conspiracy Horseman. I was a guest on it a couple weeks ago. It's great stuff. Please check it out. Yes, absolutely. But other than those three factors, I hated my time there.
Right. Okay.
They gave me the worst gimmick in wrestling history. And every time I found a way to kind of dig out from under it to try and turn it into a money gimmick, the writers would just cut my legs out from under me. And I kept trying, and I kept kind of agreeing when I shouldn't have. I should have, there was plenty of times where I was like, you know what? I'm going to tell these guys to, I don't know, can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah, fucking work
Okay,
away.
okay, I just don't, okay. So I was ready to tell a bunch of them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
One of my first days, I was going to go punch Pat Patterson in the head. But I kept getting guys like Edge, Christian, Jericho. They'd come and pull me aside and say, Joe, don't be a hothead. I'm like, well, I'm not a hothead, but this is fucking ridiculous. And they're booking me out of a job here because none of what they're doing with me is money. And you can, as a business, you can only go so long kind of pushing the charity angle. We're going to keep doing something with this guy just because he happens to be here. And eventually I'm going to get cut loose without having a chance to do anything to at least warrant my being here, to give a chance for me putting in any longevity. And they would say, no, like just, take your time, just do what they ask. It's all a test, blah, 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 blah. It's going to be fine. And I don't, when I look back at myself, I can't get mad at myself for listening to them because there were three guys all being pushed very, very, very well.
Yes.
And I don't believe any of them had any malice to say, hey, let's see how far they can fuck Joe. They weren't doing that. They were sincere in trying to help.
Christian and Edge were like friends of yours anyway, like, right?
Yeah, I helped train them.
Yeah,
so and they're the ones who put words in for me to get the job. I was going to be a new Freebird, and they were talking to Terry Taylor and Jim Cornette about it.
Wow, okay.
So I was all set to do that. And then when Michael Hayes decided not to be a TV character anymore, they threw the Freebird thing away and they didn't know what to do. But I should have dug my heels in and just said, no, I'm not doing it. Like, it's time for you guys to start doing something productive or go fuck yourself. Yeah. Because obviously what you're doing is not worthwhile. And chances are I would have got fired, but would have gotten, oh, hello.
Hello.
Sorry, my bunny's here. Hello. This is Lady Timber. Yeah, this is Lady Timber, warrior princess and master of Kung Fu.
Hi. Nice.
But, hello, lady. I love you. Yeah, so I should have stood my ground and just told them. And I didn't, because it wouldn't have affected my career, because it wouldn't have gotten any worse. And it stood a chance to get better. But I did listen to the guys who were getting pushed better. So I don't regret listening to them as much as it was the logical thing to do. But I should have followed my heart and just gone up and talked to Vince. But I mean, everybody always says, "Oh, Vince, he's a titan. You can't talk to him, and you got to lower your gaze. And like he's godlike." I never saw him as that. I should have just got up, not necessarily get in his face, But I should have just stepped up to him. It's like, what are you doing? Do you honestly think this is money? Do you honestly think anybody's going to buy a t-shirt for this? Anybody's going to buy a pay-per-view because of this character?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you he would have looked me in the face and probably would have respected the fact, you know what, this guy wants to do something. So I should have. So as much as I can, blame the company and blame the writers and blame this, part of that blame falls on my head for not just following my heart and standing my ground. So I'm willing to take the heat of that.
But do you think, obviously, do you know what I mean? Because obviously, like, as I was saying about like WWE, in the wrestling world, it's looked at as like top, it's the highest.
The pinnacle, yeah.
The mountain.
Sure.
It's the pinnacle, So like, do you think a lot of why you didn't say no to things is maybe because you'd reached there and it's like, oh, well, I don't want to like stir the pot or kind of like, can't like
exactly
alter the waters and stuff. Yeah.
Do you remember Kurgan?
Yes, I do actually. Yeah, from the oddities.
Okay.
Right?
Exactly. He's a giant. Yeah. He's one of the sweetest people I ever met. He's one of the best people I know. I wrestled him all through the Eastern Canada. He's much better than like Bob the Stooges will stay because he's a big giant. He doesn't do much, but being a giant, he doesn't have to do much. I had some great matches with him and I respect him immensely as a human being. He's a great guy. When they brought him in with the jackal and he was, using the claw and dragging people up the hill or up the ramp by the face and stuff, that was great. But he went to an office, I think it was a Christmas party.
Right.
And he got up on the dance floor with his wife and danced. And they thought he danced funny. So boom, the oddities. So all it takes is one wrong step politically that you might not even, like you're at a wedding or a Christmas party or something. There shouldn't be a wrong step there other than getting too drunk. And he didn't do anything wrong. He got up and danced because there was a dance floor, there was music, and there was 50 other people dancing. But that could be considered a mistake because then they made him a goofball.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about rocking the boat, talking to writers, talking to agents, talking to management, I talked to Shane numerous times and Stephanie saying, look, like, I think you guys are booking me out of a job here. And both of them are like, no, we love your work. And I'm like, it doesn't look like it, not from what you're doing with me. And they would list off stuff for my matches that they really liked.
Yeah.
Like, we just got to find the right vehicle. So I'm like, okay, well, they're not entirely bullshitting me because they're not just kind of going, no, you're awesome, and walking away, like dismissively. They were actually like listing stuff that they liked about me, and we want to get this, and we want to plug that in here, and we want to do this. I'm like, well, then just fucking do it.
Do it.
So they said, well, we need the right program to get you involved in. We need the right way to plug it in, and they didn't know how to start it. But that's been Vince's story forever. If you go back and look at WWE and their successes, their most successful characters, Vince has only ever made one character from the ground floor that was a monster success. Every other character was somebody who showed up over or showed up wasn't over with what they gave him, converted their gimmick, and when he saw it worked, pushed it. The only one he's done that with, but as far as ground floor, is Undertaker.
Yeah.
Hulk was already over from AWA in Japan.
Yeah.
Austin, he made the Ringmaster. When Austin took over and made it Austin 316, all of a sudden that was huge. Rocky Maivia wasn't a big deal, but The Rock was huge.
Yeah.
He didn't ground floor any of the successful ones. He ground floor getting guys, okay, I see something here. We need to get behind, we need to let them do their thing and then get behind it when it works. And that's kind of been their MO. And I wanted to get something going like that. Well, let me change it. Let me alter it. Let me adjust it. The writers wouldn't allow me to do it. Then they said, we'll send you to Memphis and you can do it there. And then when we like it, we'll move you up. I went to Memphis. Shortly after, they bought WCW and ECW and had a whole slew of guys they wanted to bring up to the main roster. And they didn't have to worry about me or anybody else moving to the competition.
Right.
Because there was no competition.
They owned it.
And they knew if they wanted me again down the road, there's one phone call away because where else is anybody working?
Yeah.
So I understand the release as well, but everything just kind of happened. It all kind of went off at wrong times for me to be able to capitalize on it anyway, unfortunately. But in fairness, if everything had gone super well and I was world champion a million times and had a gazillion dollars, I wouldn't be home and have the relationship I have with my kids now. And I thought for my entire, for years, getting in the wrestling business, I thought I was born to be a wrestler.
Yeah. And
my kids are my best friends. They're the absolute best people I know. I've come to terms with the fact that I was born to be a dad. I was born to use wrestling to make a living.
Okay.
So I have no regrets on how things panned out, because if they panned out differently, I probably wouldn't have the relationship I have with my kids, which is fantastic to me. That's the real life deal for me.
And I think that's awesome, because it's like, I think we talked about briefly on text before we came on the podcast, and we both have twin kids.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's
yep.
And you know what I mean? It's just, kids, they can hunt, they can push all your buttons, they can drive you bananas, man. But it's just a different type of job. I mean, not a job, but you know what I mean? But it's just there's this different feeling. No job kind of takes its place in a way. That's
well, it's a difference. It's a difference between gottas and gettas.
Exactly.
Right. Like if I've got to go to work, it sucks. If I get to go to work, it's awesome. If I've got to change the kids' diapers, it sucks. If I get to clean my kid up and make him feel fresh and have time with him, it's great.
Yes.
I've treated my entire relationship as gettas with my kids, and it's been, it might sound a little bit goofy, but it's been absolutely magical. I couldn't imagine it being, I imagine it being good, but never this good.
And I mean, it's got to be cool for your two boys as well to know that like their dad's a pro wrestler, like and has traveled all over the world.
Well, in Germany, at least in our area, you have to be over 15 to go to a wrestling show.
Right.
So they've never been able to go to wrestling shows to see me. They watch my crap on YouTube and DVDs that the promoters are giving me and shit. But there's a promotion I work for in the Harz, which is a mountain area about an hour and a half from here. I teach classes at the wrestling school, and then I wrestle on the show. On their very first show, it's called Unlimited Wrestling. And it's on, the whole show, I believe, is on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. I've not watched it because I don't watch myself. I know what it is. But my kids got to come to that because it's in the next state over, which doesn't have that 15-year-old rule. So the very first time they got to see me wrestle was 3 days before my 50th birthday. I was the main event. Had a great match. Crowd was berserk. It was like 700-800 people. Not the biggest venue, but a nice venue, packed.
Yeah.
They got to see the crowd go nuts for me and cheer me on. After the win, I got to bring them into the ring, and we did my post-match nonsense. And a couple of people were out there chanting "Little Legends, Little Legend," which was pretty sweet. And it's just something I can honestly, like, not one of their friends at school could say, "Oh, we all played Minecraft. Yeah. We all went to a handball game at the TUI Arena." None of their friends can say they were in the ring with a crowd cheering for them at the end of a wrestling show main event. So I'm grateful that I was able, and I'm grateful to the promoter too for giving me that opportunity to say that was cool, because it's his show. He could have said no, and he did. So I'm grateful for that entirely.
I mean, and that's got to be a win for you on a massive scale. Do you know what I mean? Just to be
completely.
Because I've always said this, and I mean, like, obviously I've like a 13-year-old daughter, and I've 2 4-year-old daughter twins. But I've always kind of like had this thing, like, you know what I mean? Because when I stopped kind of doing like the wrestling thing and everything else, and you know what I mean, the body was kind of like soared up and everything else, I kind of went back to doing what I did before, and that was kind of like filmmaking and acting and things like that. And I just love creating and characters and just all this kind of stuff. And I always kids now, and believe it or not, kids do look at their parents and they kind of like, and then like the fact that you're doing wrestling, like they're sitting there going, that's so cool, because other dads are like, I mean, it's not anything bad. You work a 9-to-5 job. It's the same thing as about going out to doing pro wrestling or acting or making a living, whichever way you want to make it. But I think it's cool that like when your dad does this creativity thing, it's just this really thing that's like not of the norm in people's eyes, and they get to go, dad's a wrestler.
Yeah, they like that, and I don't know how many times we had a delivery at the door, and the kids will run into the bedroom and grab one of my belts and look at my papa's belts, and I've got like a bunch of wrestling belts. I've also got 4 black belts in karate and kung fu, so they run around, show my black belts off and crap like that. But there's a band over here in Germany called Jupiter Jones,
right?
And I just did a music video for them, and I had to, believe it or not, I had to dance, which should be something. There should be a crime involved in that. I'm not good at dancing.
Me either.
But I'm thrilled I got through it without my hips hurting. My legs were exhausted, but my hips didn't hurt. And the music video is getting great responses over here. Like, it's really doing well. And apparently Jupiter Jones is kind of a big deal. I didn't really know, because they're completely German. They're pop. I'm more metal. Yeah. They're great guys. But the best part was my dad was like, "You were dancing? What did your kids say?" And I was like, "Well, they haven't seen it yet. They sent me the link. The video's out." But we have my dad, because my dad's been in hospital since last August. So I call him every day and video chat with him. And so he says to Connor, he's like, "Oh, so your dad was in a video and he was dancing, huh?" What'd you think? And Connor looked at him and said, "Oh, well, actually, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really looking forward to making fun of him."
Because something, being made fun of by your kids, man. I mean, it might grit your gears in that point in time, but man, it really, really, it's they're allowed to do it, and it's funny.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They get a kick out of it as well,
Yeah.
Feel like killing them, but it's like a rite of passage for them in a way, So.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sarcastic as hell, so having them be sarcastic with me is just, well, there it is. I passed it down, and it's funny. I don't get mad.
No, God, you can't.
I don't care.
I would get mad at my my oldest daughter, because she's wired to the moon. She's ADHD and things, and I figured out late in years that I had ADHD, and I was kind of going, she does crazy things and just doesn't think about things. Obviously as a parent, you kind of give out to them, it's like, don't do that. But in the back of my head, I'm going, you're a hypocrite. You would have done it 10 times worse,
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And you're just going, oh, shut up, Ren. You got to go over it. But flipping over gears for a sec, man. Here, we were talking about wrestling, right? A second ago, I just wondered, we were talking about WWE, right?
Yes.
But also, you had your time in TNA.
Yes.
2 questions for you.
Sure.
Because you won the tag team title, or the TNA, was it the TNA or the Impact tag titles there?
The NWA TNA.
NWA TNA titles. But also, did you work under Jeff Jarrett when you were there?
Yeah, he's the one who hired me.
And what was he like to work for?
He's a weasel.
I love it because I've always had that opinion. Even when you see him in TV and stuff, you hear the stories through the shoot interview things. But for someone that's actually worked with him, to get
Yeah, I don't have much patience for the guy, but I mean, I know plenty of people who've had great experiences working for him. My experience was bad, and I felt he's a weasel to me. Like, he hired me. I was working for WWA, and we were doing, it was basically all the ex-WCW guys who hadn't been picked up by Vince yet. So we had Sting, we had Luger, and we had Bagwell, and Norman Smiley, and Perry Saturn was there. We had a whole bunch of guys. So we were doing these. Oh, we had a good time. Absolutely. It was big arena shows. We always did well. So the first tour was, what was it? England, Ireland, Scotland, Switzerland. And I met Jeff there because they brought Jeff in to do a NWA TNA world title match with Nathan Jones there.
Right.
And just for one gig. He wasn't there for the full tour.
Okay.
And we met, and he was putting me over like, yeah, we definitely want to use you down in Nashville. And I was like, okay, cool, great. And then in the new year, I called and said, well, like, when am I starting? What are we doing? I've got to move from Germany there. So I need some assurances. And they couldn't assure me anything. And then I got a call from Luke the Bushwhacker, who I'd toured around the UK with. And he brought me down to Puerto Rico. So I put in a few months in Puerto Rico while I waited for TNA to get their act together. And then Jeff finally, he said, well, you're coming to the Australia WWA thing, right? When you're done with Puerto Rico. I said, yeah. So we did Australia and New Zealand. And he came down there for that. And he said, yeah, when you finish up there, come right to Windsor, because that's where Scott D'Amour's running his stuff, and he's one of the main guys. So I ended up taking over as kind of the head trainer at Scott's school. And then I would fly down, because Windsor, like I say, is right across from Detroit. If I were to fly from Canada, flight tickets like $1,200 every week. But if I go over to Detroit, it's like $200.
So it makes more sense.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, I'll be cool. I'll move to Windsor, and then I can just drive over to Detroit, fly down. And so he brought me in, and I was brought in. The angle was, it was Vince Russo bringing me in as part of his Sports Entertainment Extreme, SEX angle, which, it has Vince written all over it. I like Vince. He's not perfect, but nobody is. I don't agree with anybody 100%.
Yeah.
But he's not as bad as everybody says, as much as like Jim Cornette probably wants to stab me in the face for saying that.
I mean, I think every Jim Cornette, I mean, I've never met Jim, obviously. I think
he's a great guy.
But everyone seems to have an issue with him with how openly critique or how much he critiques the business now. But I think it's valid though,
Sure. A lot of what he says is great. It's just he delivers it in such a vulgar way that it pisses people off. But he hates Russo. And I don't mind Russo. Like I said, I don't agree with him 100%, but I get along with him. But I was part of his faction. I was supposed to come in and beat up Jeff. So I had a big angle, brief angle, but fairly big. with Jeff, and I beat him up all over the arena and get color and all this shit. And then once I finished up with that, they had a week off for some reason we weren't going to be on. And I said, well, I've got this offer to go to Germany for a 10-day tournament, but I'll have to miss 1 week. Like, I'm there for the 1 week off, but I'll have to miss the next Wednesday. If that's going to affect my spot or my push, I won't go.
Yeah.
But if I can do that, considering I'm missing a week here in Nashville, then I'd like to go and make a few bucks and visit my in-laws, blah, blah, blah. And so they were like, no, it won't affect your spot. Go ahead and go do it. So I went and did it. And then when I came home, they didn't have a spot for me. So I sat home for like a month. And, unpaid month, I might add, because that's how their contracts worked. You got paid when they used you. Yeah. And they gave you a guarantee of so many bookings. So sorry if the camera's messed up, I have to get my bunny to stop eating the window here.
Cool, man.
There we go.
No problem.
But so then D'Amore, and this is the kiss of death thing, because D'Amore really was going to bat for me, I believe.
Yeah.
But he calls me up and says, all right, I've been talking to Jeff and Dutch, and I think Dutch was part of it too, as far as undermining what they were doing with me. Because he was my boss in Puerto Rico, and he should have been helpful, but he wasn't. So Scott says, okay, here's the thing. They've got something for you. Now, let me tell you the whole thing before you shit on it. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, what? And so he said red shirt security, and he went through that whole thing. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Like, why would I come in as Vince Russo's steamroller to kill Jeff just to use that as a springboard to a lucrative job in security where I'm security for Jeff? It's ass backwards, doesn't make any sense. People will shit on this.
Yeah.
He's like, well, he goes, here's the thing is right now, that's what they have for you. If you say no, they're going to make it their business to be a long time before they have something for you. So I was like, well, you know what? I've been off for a month. I got to do something. I got to make a living. So I went in and tried to make the most of it. And they would beat us down every week, but we kept coming back. And apparently in the production meetings, I was told the Dutch specifically said, these red shirt guys, like, we can't beat them. And Scott was like, what do you mean? He said, well, every week we put them out there and they have great heat. And we've done everything to them and they keep getting heat. Like, they're uncoolable. We keep heat on them. So my argument is, do something with us. And instead they kept undermining us. Then they put the tag belts on us. But if I remember correctly, I remember Shane Douglas came in and got involved. He came in and used brass nut or chain on his hand and popped somebody. It was Road Dogg and R-Truth we beat for the belts. So he came in for no reason and hit somebody with a chain, but it didn't further an angle. Like, there was no point in Shane being specifically involved. Yeah. So then we won, and then a week later, we were supposed to defend against AJ Styles and Abyss. Him and Abyss fought all over the building and left. And then it was 2-on-1 against AJ, and they put AJ over my partner for the tag belts, and then had to vacate them. So I thought this would have been such a great angle to get huge steam on us, even if we don't beat AJ. I mean, logically we should 2-on-1, and we're both like bigger than him, so we could have done a real thug out and pissed people off because everybody loves AJ. But instead they put both belts on him, and then he had to vacate him, so it didn't serve any longevity purpose, and then just undermined us. So after that, they didn't know what to do, and then Jeff clobbered me with a guitar, and I was told, we're going to keep you home a couple weeks so you can come back hot and feud with Jeff again, but this time you'll be the baby face. I was like, okay. And then they just sat me out every week. I was, am I on? Where's my plane ticket? And they wouldn't answer the phone. And eventually I started sending some pretty angry letters to them, to be fair. I was pretty aggressive. And then to her credit, when the timing of the contract ran out, I didn't get all my gigs, but the contract was good for a certain amount of time. When it ended, Dixie Carter, like that day, came up to Scott D'Amore and gave him my check and said, make sure he gets this. So I got all the money I was promised. Yeah. But I don't think that was because Jeff or Dutch or anything like that. I think it's because Dixie, as much as she might get shit from a lot of people, Dixie was very cool with me and very honorable with me. I got nothing bad to say about her.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of my issues there seemed to interweave around Jeff. I was supposed to do a 15-minute match with him. I pieced the whole thing together. Then just before we went out for the match, he said, "Oh, we got 4 minutes." I was like, 4? How are we going to get this angle over? Because we got to come back next week with a baseball bat and a pole match, or a guitar and a pole match. He's like, "Well, we're running late. We got to just take it short. So we'll start in the comeback, and then we'll do the thing where I think Russo clobbered him and I stole the win."
Right.
And then I was like all pissed off, like shit. I walked the director and the cameraman through, because we were doing the fight all over the building. I'd walk them through where we needed cameras, where we needed people held back, where we get the best shots. I really put together a story. And after that, D'Amore runs up to me. He goes, "What the hell was that?" I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You went 4 fucking minutes." I'm like, "Well, Jeff told me the show was running late. We had to go short because, pay-per-view satellite time is super expensive.
Yeah.
You go 1 minute over, you got to pay like $100,000 for another half hour." He goes, "The whole show was short 15 minutes. So basically, Jeff didn't want to sell and lose."
Also, he fucked you in the process, like.
That's what I think.
Jesus.
So that's where I consider him a weasel. He undermined my getting over in that process, because me going over Jeff in a solid match all over, put anybody over.
Yeah.
I think my history proves that. But that would have given me a stronger position.
Yeah.
In with the fans, they would have been able to take me a lot more seriously, where they could have used me as me and not throw me into like a security gimmick. So that's where my "hey, Jeff's a weasel" kind of heat comes from.
Right. Okay.
And I know I sound like I'm a grumbly, bitchy guy, but
come here. I mean,
you asked.
But you do
I haven't brought
all
this
the
up in years, but you asked, so I want to tell you.
Sorry, man. Bring it up.
No. No. I told you could ask me anything.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer your question by all means. But I know that this bit Brett in the ass, because people brought up the Montreal screw job for years and years.
Yeah.
And then like, "Oh, he's never got over it." Well, no, you keep asking about it. So it looked like he was this grumbly prick for years and years, but it's just people kept bringing it up. So I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm happy to bring it up. I just want anybody who's listening to go, like, I'm not sitting here grumbling, demanding somebody hear this story again. I'm happy to let your listeners know because you asked.
No, I mean, and I think that's the thing as well, Joe, is like, you know what I mean? Because obviously, when people says, "Oh, they're just giving out, about these people." No, I mean, like you were in the business, you worked with him, and he didn't, and he did you wrong. So, I mean, you're allowed to have your story and not have a good opinion. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking here, so we're coming close to near the end of the time of the interview. But I gotta ask you a question.
Sure.
Before we go, as I'm from Limerick, because I loved hearing all your stories and stuff. And I mean, I don't even think we really got deep dive into your entire career. So I mean, at a later date, I think we could definitely come back and really scoop.
Happy to.
If you were up for that,
whenever you need me, I'm there, buddy. Whenever you need me.
The Joey Legend Part 2. So man, yeah, I'll keep that in context. Yeah, definitely, man. I think we could definitely not redo it, but I think there's a lot more. Your career is huge. Let's be honest. Your career is massive. So
it's long.
You know what I mean? Obviously, do you know what I mean? You get it in one interview. You're not going to fill in all the things you're going to get, the questions you kind of want to ask in that interview and things. But I think looking over your entire career, even because you're still going now, I mean, I think there's still definitely another deep dive into other sections like IWA and things like that we can definitely log into. So if you're up for coming back on at a later date, man, I'd love to talk. But the question I have for you, and I was actually asked by one of my friends to ask you this while we were on the interview, right? I'm from Limerick City, as you know, so is Dave. Do you remember the wrestling in a place called the UL? Do you remember shows there?
I remember. Well, I need a little more specific.
Okay.
But I remember wrestling Ireland many, many times.
So the show was in Limerick, and you were wrestling a cage match with Rhino.
Oh yes, I do remember that. Yeah, it was Scotty. Yes. The Scotty slammed the cage, and then Brett put me in the sharpshooter. Yeah.
Yes. And the reason I actually brought that up was because my mate Brian O'Regan, the guy I mentioned, we do the Retro Wrestle Chat, and we do the Culture Cast on Sunday nights, the podcast and things. He actually met you on the show.
All right.
He has your autograph and things at home.
Nice.
Because I was telling him I was coming on and doing a podcast with you tonight, and he was like, "Oh, that's so cool." So I was just going to even ask you, would you give him a quick shout out on the podcast just to say, no, hi Brian O'Regan or Brian's Action Figure Reviews or whichever? That's his YouTube channel, by the way.
Okay. What's this YouTube channel called? It's like, hey Brian Regan, but
Brian's Action Figure Reviews.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Check into Brian's Action Figure Reviews. It's awesome.
Is that's spoken words from Joey Legend there, kids. All right, there you go.
He's a good man.
Ran the gauntlet in professional wrestling. He has been at all. He's been through it all. He's been to the pinnacle of the mountain, and he's been in every chop balance the entire way up and down. Joey, it has been absolutely pleasure to talk to you tonight, my friend.
It's been my pleasure being here, and by all means, like anytime you want to, I'm happy to chat more. And I'm pretty much an open book. You ask me anything, I don't mind a bit.
I'm definitely going to take you up on it, man. I definitely think this needs a part 2, and I think we definitely should organize to do that. But for the most part, I've really enjoyed listening to your stories about like just WWE, TNA, Jeff Jarrett, and all this. It's been really good, entertaining content. Like, I mean, normally I ramble on these podcasts. If you watch any of them down the road, you know I'm a talky motherfucker. But I was so intrigued in just listening to what you were saying and stuff, and it was really a good conversation based on your stories. Really good stories, man. I like them. But every good story. That. And you are the Book of Legends, so like every book,
that's right.
Sometimes that cover has to close for another day, doesn't it? That's the worst thing.
That's right.
So on behalf of me and Joe, this is the Twisted Tubz podcast. I am your host, Stephen Tuberty, aka Twisted Tubz. He is Joe Hitchin, aka Joey Legend. What's the tagline, Joe? We'll send him home on it.
Okay. Well, first of all, check out w3lwrestling.com. They have my new t-shirts on sale. And the catchphrase is heroes come and go, legends live forever.
Now throw those thumbs up and we'll just say goodbye to him, Joe.